This shop's got some really cool guitars. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So let's take a look at a few of them together. Starting with this one. It's so unique. We've got rosewood top, back, and sides. We have bound F-holes. We've got the low impedance pickup like you would find on the later Les Paul recording, but currently at this time it'd be like the Les Paul Professional or Personal because this is reportedly from 1968. But then we've got 3 witch hat knobs, we've got a reflector, we have similar controls to one of those Les Pauls, but a matching bound rosewood pickguard, and then come on down here, we've got someone's name, Tony Mottola. And what's really cool is you can see him here right there on his album cover of All the Way, and it tells you a little bit about the controls. From that one being the pickup selector and this being in and out of phase. The weird knob was the decade selector. But this was a custom order from him. And at first I just thought it was a crest because look, same stuff, bound F-holes. Now the pickups are a little bit different, but you got a similar tailpiece. But the thing about the crests, you have to know they have the whole short neck thing going on, and they're like an ES330, where they don't have a center block, but yet they're still fancy with the custom emblems and our rosewood fretboards, but with the block inlays. Crests are beautiful guitars. I have a rather cool one in my collection that was a 80s NAMM show display piece that has like additional rosewood parts to it, and it has the long neck, as well as some other The Les Paul style elements. So imagine my surprise when I see this full body shot, and once again, it's a long neck, so that fixes the biggest problem that a lot of people have with them. But instead of a rosewood board, it appears we've got the ebony, and he's calling it a 355. So I'm curious, does it have the center block? Now, unfortunately, I don't have that answer to report on at this time, but it's just such a cool piece. That was custom ordered by a famous jazz musician. Then, of course, you get to the back, you get the binding on the heel, and it's a 3-piece mahogany neck. 68 means it's before the volutes and all that. But interestingly enough, still a 3-piece neck. But wait until you see this next one. It's advertised as a 1964 355, but way different this time. We went back to tradition. We've got a nice cherry color, looks like a factory Bigsby thrown on here. Outside of that, it honestly seems pretty plain. But then you get to the full body shot and you're like, oh, there's a reason there's this many likes on it. So we have a specially inlaid J.S. Peterson. Now, unfortunately, we don't know who that is, but this was a custom order for somebody. That used to be a big thing. Nowadays, it's just kind of seen as tacky and a bit too gaudy, but it had its place. But look at this headstock. It's so cool. You've got a knight, you've got his castle, you've got his family crest / shield thing going on here with some moons. I am far from a leading expert in 60s Gibson history, but I have seen it one other time, and we got to go back and talk about the crests again. So there's these crests, and then there's this crest. It had interesting pickup configurations, a baritone, interesting Florentine cutaway. And then ever since the day I saw its headstock, I knew I wanted a guitar like that. So I had no idea there were any other guitars with that too. I would love to see Gibson do a reissue like a Knight Les Paul custom. But the back, it's just cherry. And your headstock is a little bit larger than normal, so like Super 400-like style. So certainly quite different from a regular ES355. But before we check out more cool guitars, we need to have a word from our sponsor, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is a great place to buy all your new gear, and that's from electric guitars to pianos, orchestral instruments. My favorite thing is the fact that you can pick out the instrument that you want, from your weight down to the serial number to the kind of top. When I'm looking for something special, I always go to Sweetwater, and they're going to hook you up with a sales engineer that's going to not only help you with this sale, but many of other sales down the road as well. I think I've been with mine for nearly 15 years now. So thank you, Sweetwater, for being a long-term sponsor of my show. Next, surprise! It's another 355. Gather yourself for a minute as you take in the beauty of this. A, the finish has really become this nice washed-out watermelon cherry kind of color. B, it's got double pick guards. C, it's got pick guards around each knob. And D, you've got this steer head plaque in the center of it. I wonder if that's hiding something. But it says custom made for Bernie Smith, 1960. And I told you, it was very famous back in the day to put your name on the fretboard. Stars were doing it. This one is Bernie. So he's got his name here. He's got his name there. Then look at our headstock. We've got one of those deco plate truss rod covers. And then I thought these were inlaid little guitars, and I about lost my mind. But if I'm interpreting the listing correctly, I believe they're just stickers. But Bernie was a popular studio musician in Louisville, Kentucky. But check out that fretboard, super ultra multiply binding and purfling along the edges. Oh man, I love guitars like that. They're so over the top and gaudy, but it's great, especially when they leave a little bit of the fretboard wood right here before they go in for additional layers. Like, you have to be a monster player to have something like this. I thought this was rather apropos. They posted a 66 Firebird 12 in Inverness green finish. So it might just look like your regular non-reverse. But then you get here and, oh yeah, it's a 12 string. And then rather quietly today, Gibson reissued this out of nowhere. I would have never imagined in a million years we would see a 65 12-string Firebird come back, but nah, here it is, $6,000. If anybody wants a new Guitar Day one, I'd be thrilled to check it out. But no, this one did not actually start life blue and age. It started green, and it's got finish checking, and we got some nicks and dings, but custom color, Firebird 12. They also made 12-string 335s, and at one point in time, they actually used to be cheaper than the 6-string version, so some people would just take them, string them up halfway, and just have some fun like that. I've always loved the headstock on these, and that's why I was really excited to see a reissue today, because they had to recreate it. But the aging on this one's just spectacular. I was not prepared for this 68 Telecaster. I didn't see this before making this episode. It's just a nice butterscotch blonde with a white guard. Beautiful, right? Let's move on to our next one. Nah, just kidding. So, kind of looks normal. Unfortunately, somebody had like a sticker on here at one point in time. We've got kind of weird colored inlays. But our headstock's just about normal. And the back has nothing going on. But imagine, you're a dealer, you decide to do a blacklight test, and then this is what you see. That's really cool. Our fretboard gets this like bursted paint job, like you could not see that on the headstock at all. Now the squiggly flower, you could see that particular one, but did you see any of these others? I didn't. But according to this shop, this is a Dayglow Ghost Telly. And a few of these tellies were made for the 68 NAMM show. And they had these special UV activated pigments. So, you know, when you had the cool blacklight things going on, this is what your guitar would look like on stage. Very insanely cool. Especially because if the gig doesn't necessarily call for your hot pink telly with flowers on it, you can turn it back into a slightly more traditional one. I would love to see Fender do something similar again, because the fact that you can turn it on and off is a lot of fun. I can't even begin to imagine what kind of value might be placed on that. But this is truly drool-worthy. Formerly owned by Jeff in 38 Special, we've got a Firebird 7 in factory black. That looks so good with the nickel hardware. Well, I guess now that we look a little closer, I think it did start life gold, but it looks good as is. That's technically a custom color on one of these, I do believe. And I love the way that the binding sticks out so proud against that finish. It's just a really cool custom vibe to it. Personally, I've always found factory black custom color guitars a little bit boring, but this one, it's got enough going on for it. And I think we've talked about this before, but every time I see it, it's just whew. So, this is a ES295. They're usually gold tops. Sometimes you'll find a tobacco, but this one is Argentine gray, one of my favorite vintage colors. And the 295 was only briefly made with humbuckers in its original era. Typically you associate these with the P90 pickups because, you know, Scotty Moore, Elvis stuff. They're some of my favorite guitars, but since the ones that did get the humbuckers are usually PAFs, these tend to have a lot of value added to them for that. So highly desirable model. Seems to be in good condition, awesome color, and the humbuckers. It never ceases to amaze me what they can pull up. But if you thought we were done with initials and stuff, check this one out. Super 400, 1964. That started life blue and is aged to this kind of greenish hue. I wonder, did it actually start life as a blue burst and it's just evenly aged over? I'm just seeing that for the first time. But they decided to put their initials on it. Looks like it would have started life gold. But my goodness, a Veritone on a Super 400? That's fun. And of course, we've got the giant headstock in our fancy truss rod cover. That's actually standard equipment for this model. But we've got the Super 400 inlays, including the ledger that marks it as special blue. But I got excited because that totally says with baritone instead of veritone. But apparently this belonged to a guy who lived in Barbados. But what I love the most is this actually just appears to be a flat color. It's not actually sparkly like some burgundy or pelham blue finishes. So when you move on to the back and look really closely at some of the binding areas, it's just very different from what we've seen before, especially on that headstock. It's really cool when you get the inlay work back here. That's one of my favorite things about my Santana signed Les Paul. But to see it with a solid color around it, normally it's black, but this one's solid color bluish green with your original Kluson seal fasts, yeah. And because you've been good watchers. Here's a few other fun ones, you guys know I like my tenor guitars, but this one's double weird because it's 3/4 tenor. So it's extra strange. Look how tiny that neck is and how far it sits into the body. Capped off edge pieces of your P90 with mother of pearl, just for good measure. And then kind of your banjo-esque looking headstock. But if 3/4 isn't your style, they also have this one. I think it was Rumble Seat Music who actually has a video on this one at one point in time. It's a custom ordered tenor SG standard with kind of a Firebird inspired headstock. So cool. I can't wait to have something like that in my collection because they just make me smile every time I look at a tenor. Mainly the vintage tenors, and this one's cool because it's got some paperwork. Then lastly, here's the opposite of a tenor. You can have a 6-string bass. Yeah, this is the EB6. Kind of like a Fender Bass 6 if I understand things correctly. But you've got 6 honking bass tuners on here. That's fun. Even Samurai Guitarist was like, what? Gibson could clean up if they would reissue these because the vintage originals, I think the last one I remember seeing for sale was at Chicago Music Exchange, and it had a headstock break and they were asking 20 grand, something like that. All right, they were asking 15 and now it's down to 11.5. But yeah, that's what I remembered. I think they had to repair the neck and they made it a bolt-on neck design, and then somebody just properly doweled it in. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to visit our sponsor, Sweetwater. And if you like what you saw and you're interested, you got to call up Davidson's Well Strung Guitars. Take care.